Well, recent growth numbers show that South Africa is slowly headed back toward recession unless we have some kind of miracle. We've had jobs numbers in recent weeks which have shown an increase up to 29% official unemployment rate. In real terms, it's over 40%. Certainly anecdotally, you just have to look around you, look at the streets, look at people sitting on corners to realize that we've got a dysfunctional economy. It's a deeply problematic economy. It's an economy that sheds jobs at a prolific rate and will continue to do so, particularly as government, which is running out of money, has to start cutting back in the civil service. It's a tragic inevitability. One of the solutions that government likes to put forward from time to time is, well, then go and start your own business. Let's test it with a guy who's been helping people start businesses for 19 going on 20 years. His name is Allon Raiz. He runs a business called Raizcorp. Raizcorp is a business incubator. You basically look for people with bright ideas and you help them start and run their businesses and send them on their merry way, Allon.
Yeah, Bruce, first of all, thanks for this discussion. It's very important that we see entrepreneurship not just as ideas, but also people who have existing businesses, and even people who are 10 years in, who are now battling to get to the next phase. So we don't look at entrepreneurship just at the startup phase. And I think that's a big part of the mythology around small business, that it's always about the sparkly idea that needs.
Well, Silicon Valley sells that dream, don't they? All you need is a laptop, some coding skills, and a bright idea, and you can fix the world's problems. That's a nice idea.
Yeah, but the problem is that those businesses, when you scratch just below the surface, are not really making money. And that to me is a big issue, is that there's a lot of hype around entrepreneurship. And I've actually written an article called We Glamorize Entrepreneurship Too Much. And that's a big problem, because when you glamorize entrepreneurship, people's perception is just as you've identified right now, which is that I come up with the idea, I get some money, write a business plan, and then off I go. And it really doesn't happen that way. So entrepreneurs who are starting businesses don't realize, first of all, how long it takes to become profitable, and certainly not knowing how long it takes to be cash flow positive. They also don't understand the ups and downs and how incredibly difficult this journey is. And they also don't understand that all the promises made to them in the beginning by friends, family, and a whole bunch of people then basically vaporize when you go to market and say, well, you said you would back me, or you said you would support me, and we've just used our budget up, come next year. And then these businesses collapse.
Why is it so infernally difficult? Because we sold the dream that it is glamorous and you can work for yourself, you don't have to have a boss, you can create your own destiny. This is the promise of entrepreneurship. This is the lie, as Auntie Pie, who's an economist I know, says that telling people to go out and start a business is a cruel hoax.
Yes.
Because the vast majority of people statistically around the world are going to try and fail.
Yes. And the reason for that, Bruce, is because the risk multiplies. It's not cumulative, it multiplies. So if you got one risk and a second risk and a third risk and a fourth and so on, the fact that you've got all these risks, it's a multiplication equation, not an addition. So in entrepreneurship, when you start a business, you've got funding risk, you've got people risk, you've got client risk, you've got economic risk, you've got political risk, you've got all these risks embedded in this journey. And if any of them go wrong, and they basically multiply out your whole risk in the business, and your business therefore is very, very vulnerable to any change, particularly in the first couple of years. And people don't get that.
And also, you're at risk that maybe you've got a bad idea, or maybe you don't have the energy, or maybe you actually don't have the capacity to do it. So often the biggest constraint in entrepreneurship is the individual who sets out on a journey thinking, I'm creating a job for myself. And actually what they're doing is they're just creating multiple levels of headache for themselves.
Yeah, and you've touched on that. You mentioned the fact that we're involved in Raizcorp. And in our selection piece, we get 50 to 100 applications every day. 1 in 100 of those we will accept in. Nowhere in that whole selection process do we use a business plan as the method of determining whether we will take them in or not.
So how do you select whether that one out of those 100 is going to be the one who's got the best chance of success?
character, what we call blue heart, that ability to stand up again and again and again.
How do you test for that?
We've built over 19 years, we've built a methodology that is by no means perfect, but it's been very, very successful for us. And it's really around certain characteristics such as internal locus of control. We look at things like flexibility. We look at things like their relationship with their father, which I've spoken to you on many occasions about. We look at a whole bunch. It's really about the individual and their lens on the world, and not about this beautiful business plan that always looks the same. It's a beautiful J, in year 3 I make lots of money. They all look the same. So it's about the individual. And that, to me, is the most important thing that we miss.
But in a country like South Africa, where entrepreneurship is not always a choice, it's often a need, it's a necessity to survive. People have been laid off, or they've left matric, they might not even have got matric, or they did get matric, or they did get some kind of tertiary education, yet they can't find a job. They're very, very scarce things to have, so they're forced to go and do something.
Yes.
And you're telling 99 out of 100 of those people, actually, you're not going to cut it.
Yes, for now. For me, entrepreneurship is so inadvertently we're asking the question, are you born or are you made? And it's the wrong question. It's, are the conditions right for you to precipitate? When you reframe that question to when is the right time when entrepreneurs precipitate, then government and entrepreneurs alike can analyze their situation in a different way to whether I was born or I was made. And to precipitate, there has to be an opportunity, and very often these are not real opportunities or a crisis in the life, like I've lost my job. Number 2, you have to have a tolerance for pain, and there's a whole depth in that. Tolerance for risk, a belief in your ability to master resources, in other words, put things together, and finally your ability to learn and iterate. If those conditions are present, then entrepreneurs precipitate.
Okay, so that's all well and good, and we're going to have to go back on PVR to revisit those, because those are critical points. But in an environment where our education system is failing kids, where 78% of 10-year-olds, grade 4s, can't read for comprehension and meaning in South Africa, these are stats that are in the public domain, how do we create an entrepreneurial dynasty in South Africa in an area where basic education is failing people?
Incredibly difficult to do so. And I believe that maths is the core, because the basis of entrepreneurship is...
But maths failure rates are even higher.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying it's so difficult, because maths, even the science, the science, and I'm not trying to diminish the need for science, but in entrepreneurship, maths to me is the most important element, because we have to count the money, right?
Yeah.
Or count the debt.
Or count the losses, yes.
Yeah, exactly. But you have to be able to count things and work things out in percentages. And you're quite right. We see so many entrepreneurs come to us, and they literally cannot, add or subtract. And to me, that's basically a big red flag for us, whether we will back them or not.
So how do you get a supply of wannabe entrepreneurs? Well, you need to educate them differently than the rest of the population. So what Allon Raiz did a couple of years ago was he came here in Randburg and bought a tired, dilapidated private school that was failing, and gave it a fresh coat of paint, gave it a burst of energy, changed the curriculum, and is now teaching a group of about 270 young kids, with more coming in every year, the basics of entrepreneurship within the government framework of education. We're going to talk to him about how he bought the school, why he bought the school, and whether he hates himself enough to get into try to educating the minds of young people, or whether this is the prime opportunity for South Africa 2.0 in a moment.